It's the 20th of February and it's warmed up a little bit. We've had 2 weeks of cold weather, in fact 3 weeks of cold weather. These bees are working, they're also throwing out telltale signs and chalk brood. They have chalk brood, I've been chucking that out. Seeing a little bit of pollen going in. It's not quite that warm yet, but it's warmer, a lot warmer than it has been. These are working too, or at least they're flying. Are they taking any pollen in? I haven't seen any yet. Oh. No, not yet. The snowdrops are flowering, but they're not really quite fully open. Aconites are. I think I might have lost the bees in this box. I'm going to open it up and have a look. Oh yes, this colony is gone. Plenty of food in it still, but not many dead bees. Get the rest of the frames out and have a look at the hardly any dead bees in it, so it looks as though they probably absconded before they actually failed. Right. Well, every frame has got some kind of stores in it. Quite a lot of stores, and quite a lot of mouldy pollen. It's not very many dead bees, the odd one here and there. So either the cluster was just so small, the amount of bees was so small as we went into winter, they couldn't cope, or they left. No pollen on the outside frames, and you can see where the stores have been added over a period of time. Right, well I'm going to give this to one of those colonies over there that does have flying bees. Right, well the bees are up in this super, and they do have some stores in it, I can see. But I'm going to put this brood box on as well. Unfortunately on top of the super, but that's just how it's going to have to be for the time being. Right, well they've got plenty of stores now, and in a few weeks time, and when we get another warm spell or better spell of good weather than this, because it's still early days, maybe in about 3 weeks, I can take that super up and make it a proper 2 double brood setup, and then later on I can split it up again. But that at least uses those stores for the time being. Alright, well that floor could have done with a good clean, and it will get one eventually, but for the time being it's housing these empty supers. The bottom super's got a little bit of honey in it, but not very much. The other 2 supers are pretty empty, and yeah, wonder how many more we've got of the dead. Some more, I expect. I'm going to have a look, see how the fondant's holding up in this feeder box. Well, they have eaten some of it, but there's still quite a lot more there for them to go at. So I'm thinking that I'm going to put that brood box on top of this brood box, but while they're still eating this fondant, I might as well leave it all alone. And they are flying, so that's something. Once they get going on that fondant, they might eat it all quite quickly. I think to some degree it depends on the weather. I hate to say it, but I think this box has it's got no live bees in it either. That's a shame. Let's have a look. And it hasn't. Not very many dead bees in it from what I can see. I'm not going to take all those frames out right now. There's quite a lot of honey in this super as well. And quite heavy when I picked it up. Yeah. And look at that one. So they weren't starving. They weren't starving. So it's something else. Of course, it could be the fact they haven't had any treatment and they've succumbed to the Varroa mites. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. I just don't think they were good enough and strong enough as colonies. So what about this one? This one had the black queen in that struggled through the winter in a very small box. Let's see what this one's like. Well, there's not much life in this one either. Again, there's honey, honey there, honey there. So look down the bottom. This one is slightly different. It does have a few bees in it. And not very many. The remains of some brood. Not exactly completely out of stores there. There's a lot more stores there. A few more dead bees in this one, but not really very many dead bees. Alright, well, scrape them off the floor and put it back together again. There wasn't any stores on the outside. Well, there was actually. Right to the outside frame there was stores. So that's another one gone. It's a bad year this year. Wow. This one has died too. So that was a strong colony. Now we did see a lot of dead bees in the winter. So I'm going to take these bottom frames out and see how many bees are in the bottom of the box. Possibly quite a lot. Well, that's more the amount of bees that one expects to see in a failed colony. Now, they don't normally fail in these poly boxes, but this one has, and it's hard to say why. It may have even been because the entrance got blocked up in winter. It's a bit of a shame if that's the case. Not very much food in the bottom box, but plenty in the middle box. Let's clean it up a bit anyway. Well, they certainly had food, but of course it may have just been in the wrong place when it was too cold for them to move around and get it. So that could be part of the problem. It's so hard to know exactly why one loses a colony. Certainly the weather hasn't helped this year, and it's bit telling that the ones that have survived are all sheltered from the east wind, which is where the cold winds have been coming from. Mind you, these are not facing east, so that might not be it. Sad, sad. And this is where the cluster was, and that's the straws that they'd moved to get close to it. But yeah, I think these actually, I think these ones must have starved. I don't think the food was in the right place for them for such a long time without them being able to move around. But as I say, it's very hard to know. Now, this is the stores in the top box, immediately above where the that patch of brood was. So the last time they had brood was in the middle box, which makes sense. Bottom box had vacated because it was pretty much empty, and the top back box had this in it. Maybe it's because it's ivy honey, it's too hard for them to deal with. It might be the case. I do believe, that smells like ivy honey. I do believe that they can't really cope with ivy honey until about June, when it starts to get soft, and then sees them through the June gap. But we're in February, nowhere near the June gap. I think one of the lessons to take from this box is I should have fed them more when they were doing really well and making that ivy honey, so that they mixed it with the ivy. No, I did give them some liquid feed, but possibly a bit late. They took it all down really quickly, and then of course I gave them this fondant, and they seemed to be doing that quite well at first, but no, that didn't keep them going. So I don't think it was food, although it may well be an isolation problem, so isolated from the food. 3 weeks of cold weather when they just can't move around even inside the box just doesn't help. Wow, loads of late honey by the looks of things. Loads of late honey, but I think the bees are still dead. I know it's late honey because these frames were all extracted in August and September, and then put back on the hive. So this honey is awesome honey. Get one out. There's it. Awesome honey. So, no shortage of awesome honey, and it looks as though they were eating it quite a bit too. But there are no live bees in the box, so this is another dead out. Let's have a look in the brood box. Well, they never did fill up their 2 outside frames, but they did make plenty of honey in the autumn. There it is. Yeah. Tastes alright. It's ivy honey. Right. Let's see how many bees are in the box. There we are. Quite a lot of bees in there. So I wouldn't say they absconded. They definitely died in situ. And they haven't got there. Well, if they're all like that, stuck inside the frames and their tails in the air, I would have said they died through lack of food. But these are not like that, and they're right on the edge of their food. So it's something else. Now again, maybe because they haven't been treated with Varroa, they couldn't cope. But they're a young queen, this year's queen, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think the colony was too small in this for a sustained cold spell. But then I would say that, wouldn't I? Well, that's more the amount of bees you'd expect to see in the bottom of a beehive that's died out. It's a shame that they've died out. Sometimes you can see a queen in amongst them all, but God, sometimes you don't really even want to look at it that closely. You just want to get it cleaned up and move on. But I'm quite surprised, really. They did so well in the autumn, made a lot of honey in for a colony, late colony. But they obviously, I don't know. Right, well at the moment, there are still bees in this little box here, but all of these other boxes are now empty. So we're going to have to increase those quite dramatically once the season gets going. I haven't opened this box, but I think it's another dead out. Do that one next time. That one, well, we looked at it, very sad. That one on the end there, I think it's a dead out too. Haven't done that one today. And that one just dealt with. So none of the colonies in this middle section survived. Over here, which is really just basically old kit, spare kit, most of it old. There's still some bees in that box. It's very heavy, it's got lots of stores, but how healthy the bees are, I'm not sure. Don't have a lot of hope for them, to be honest. There weren't lots flying today. These have been flying quite well, and these are flying quite well. There's a bit of activity from that one as well. So maybe these boxes that are sheltered here from the east wind, maybe they didn't suffer quite so much from this harsh weather we've been having. But devastating, really, devastating. Out of the whole place at the moment there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, only 5 boxes with live bees in. So that's not very good. Not very good at all.